For this afternoon and tonight, a significant winter storm, including heavy snow with blowing and freezing snow.
Hello and welcome to the Snowbrains podcast, where it's my job to interview the most intelligent people in the snow sports industry and pass their fascinating knowledge on to you, our listeners. I'm your host, Miles Clark. I'm a professional free skier, a mountain guide, an Alaska Heli-Ski guide, a UC Berkeley molecular cell biology graduate, the founder and CEO of Snowbrains, and I just traveled 52 hours to get down to Patagonia for my 14th season here. Well, it would have been only 29 hours, but I'm so smart that on a 7-hour layover in Santiago, Chile, I forgot my phone was in airplane mode and was showing the time in Utah, not Santiago, leading me to miss my flight to Bariloche. I had to get special permission to go backwards through airport security and Chilean customs. I had to go to the police station, and I had to walk outside for about a mile to get to the domestic terminal to pick up my bags. I then grabbed an Uber, slumped into a nearby hotel room where I watched Castaway with Tom Hanks and cried like a baby at the ending. Finally, the next day, I Ubered back to the airport, got on my 2-hour flight to Bariloche, and the vistas out the plane window were breathtaking, insane. In one eyeball full, I saw volcanoes, snow, lakes, forest, and even the ocean. Patagonia is otherworldly. Thank you, Patagonia. This episode of the Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by Club Med. Are you ready for an unforgettable ski getaway that takes care of everything? And I mean everything. Head to one of Club Med's mountain resorts where you can experience the thrill of the slopes without worrying about a thing. With their all-inclusive packages, you'll get all your lift tickets, ski passes, ski and snowboard lessons for all ages and ski levels, delicious meals, exciting après-ski activities, and even childcare for the kids, all included in the price. So you can focus on what matters most, carving perfect turns and enjoying the breathtaking views. Visit www.clubmed.us or call 1-800-CLUB-MED or call your travel advisor to book your ski escape today. My guest today is Jessica Baker. Jessica has been a heli-ski guide in Alaska for over 20 years. She's the 2000 North American Freeskiing World Tour champion. Jessica is a mountain guide guiding all over Earth, as well as in the Teton Mountains of Wyoming with Exum Mountain Guides. She's the founder, head coach, and lead guide for Ski Divas women's camps. Jessica is an AMGA certified ski and alpine guide. She's an active PSIA Level III Division Education Clinic Leader. Jessica is AAI Avalanche Level III Guide Certified and an Avalanche instructor with American Avalanche Institute. She spearheaded North America's first Black, Indigenous, and people of color ski camp. Jessica has skied, coached, and guided all over the world, including Alaska, Greenland, Svalbard, Norway, Wyoming, France, the Arctic, Argentina, Idaho, British Columbia, and a lot more. Hello, Jessica. Welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Miles?
I'm happy. I'm very happy that you're here on the show with me. So I always ask everybody, when did you ski last?
Well, actually, it wasn't that long ago. Last day of skiing was June 4th, actually.
Oh, wow.
In Greenland. Yeah.
Nice. And it's late July now, so that wasn't long ago. How many days
Yeah.
do you think you skied this year?
Oh, gosh. That's a tough one. I'm going to say over 200. Over 200.
Really? And are you skiing in the summer too? How does the 200 happen? That's a lot.
Yeah, I definitely get some time in the summer. So I'm going to just draw this conclusion that like last August, I was in New Zealand. And then from there, my ski season started shortly thereafter in the Tetons and Jackson, and then kind of through the winter. And this year, my season was extended in Greenland. So
Wow.
yeah,
I'm impressed.
starts early, ends late.
You're definitely a ski freak. I love it. So cool. Jessica, today I really want to dig into your pro skiing career, your Alaska Heli-Ski guiding, your company Ski Divas, the women's ski camp, and a lot more. But I'd love to start with your quick and dirty 3-minute life story.
I grew up in North Idaho, Sandpoint, Idaho, on a farm. I had 3 sisters, all redheads, and we had a lot of, my poor dad.
I love it.
Yeah. But I grew up in the mountains. The Sandpoint's right at the start of the Selkirk Crest and the Cabinet Wilderness, and grew up in the mountains. Grew up skiing. Grew up very outdoorsy. Grew up with a lot of animals, being outside, working hard, and ultimately very much instilled in me a love for the outdoors and the natural world and skiing. So yeah, went on from there to ski race. Spent a long time ski racing. Went into collegiate level ski racing, NCAA Division One. I raced for
Oh,
Bates
wow.
College. And then from there, I decided after college to move to Jackson, Wyoming, where I picked up more of a big mountain free skiing side of my skiing, and then kind of catapulted into sort of a professional ski career from there. And I've been in Jackson now for, oh boy, like 24 years now. And yeah, I live here with my family and my two daughters and my husband. And I still have family up in North Idaho too. So yeah.
I love it. You grew up on Ginger Farm in North Idaho.
Yeah.
Ski racer. That's so cool. So I'm curious about, you said ski race for a long time. Can you share some of your early experiences and what drew you to competitive skiing?
Yeah, it was interesting. So I do have like multi-generational skiing in my family. Actually, my grandparents on both sides of my family, my mom's and my dad's, were skiers. My parents went on to love skiing, and then they shared it with us. So they taught me to ski as a young girl. I think I learned how to ski when I was 5. 5 was the first time I went skiing. Pretty young
Nice.
at the time. At the age of 9, they said, "Do you want to try ski racing?" And this was for Schweitzer Alpine Racing School stars. And I was like, "Ah, sure, I'll try it." And I knew a couple people that were doing it. And I was definitely like the underdog. A lot of the kids had started at 6, 7 years old, and
Right.
I was 9 coming into it, like had never raced before. I remember like the first day training with the team, I was like, they were doing one skied skiing and I had never done it before and I had no idea how to do it. And they were just lapping me. And I
Wow.
was so determined. I was like, I am going to get good at this. And a long story short, I spent like a couple years trying to play catch up, just trying to get to the level the rest of the racers were at. And it was very motivating for me. And then I suddenly, not only did I catch up to them, I sort of like excelled because I was working so hard to catch them. It sort of like catapulted me into a better space. And then my ski racing kind of took off, and I, started attending some of the junior Olympics and the Western region. The team, I got on the Western region team, and then nationals, and it just sort of like bloomed. And then at some point I had to make a decision, like, do I try like towards the US ski team? Do I go that deep to this, or do I go to school and go get an education? And it was sort of a turning point, and I ended up deciding to go for the education side of it, because at that stage I was already starting to get burned out, and I'm like, how could I possibly be motivated enough to try for the US ski team at this stage? So then I went to the collegiate side of it, which was still hard. It was very competitive.
Going for the
Yeah.
ski team is intense. And how did that ski racing evolve into big mountain skiing? And how did ski racing help your big mountain skiing?
So, I had always, as a ski racer, you're always like free skiing around, or you have a big powder. Of course, you have a powder day whenever you have a downhill. That's inevitable. And, it was like, I was like the bad kid who was like, yeah, yeah, sure, I'll go slip the course, and then I'd go powder skiing. But,
Nice.
I loved free skiing. And as my undergraduate work came to an end at Bates College, I was like, where do I want to be? I had traveled to Jackson the summer prior to my graduation, and I could tell I wanted to be in Jackson, Wyoming. I saw the Tetons and I was so inspired,
Mhm.
and people like Doug Coombs lived in Jackson. These are like
Yeah.
heroes of mine that I had not yet met, but I was just so inspired by the place and the people. And I was such a skier, and it was a ski culture. So it was like the place I wanted to go to expand to the big mountain side. And so, well, part of why I moved to Jackson was I got hired on by the ski school at Jackson Hole. And so they hired me on as an instructor. And I'm a PSIA level 3 certified instructor. So, I have the certification, and I was getting my certification during that time. It was great because there were all these super skilled skiers, a lot of them with like ski racing backgrounds. They were watching me ski, and the ski school at the time was probably like 300 or 400 people deep. And now it's like up to like 700. But it was big enough that you could meet a lot of people, but small enough that you met everybody. And I met people like Doug Perini and AJ Cargill, and ultimately Doug Coombs and Nat Patridge and all these people who were kind of pushing skiing in different ways, kind of big mountain style. And some of these people, especially AJ Cargill, she was like, you've got to try one of these free skiing competitions. At the time I was like, oh, what is that? And she's like, you should try it. And so the next year, and I trained a little, and the next year I signed up for the North American freeride event at Kirkwood. And not really knowing what I was getting into, get there, start training with like skiing around and training with the likes of like Jim Jack, who was just, oh, here's a good line and here's a good line. And just people were taking me under their wing instantly. I was like, oh, cool. And as I started looking at the mountains and looking at the lines, it wasn't unlike looking at a course or memorizing a course. A big part of the judging was your speed, your fluidity, your line choice. And those are really big parts of ski racing too. So that all started to translate pretty quickly. And so I did the qualifier at Kirkwood, won. Of course, they put me in the finals. I won. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm good at this.
And that was your first comp.
First comp. And I like didn't know anyone, didn't have any sponsors. I was just like, great, sure, I'll try this. Paid out of my pocket, paid for everything with a credit card.
Right.
So that was cool. And there was still one more competition that year. So that was like the North American Championships, but Crested Butte still had one more competition. They had their finals. It was part of the North American tour. So I went to Crested Butte because I had only done one competition before. They also required me to do the qualifier. So I did the qualifier, won that again. And I was like, oh,
3 for 3.
And then of course put me in the finals, and it was some of the craziest, rockiest, gnarliest, most technical terrain I had ever.
Brutal. Yeah.
So gnarly. I was like, these skiers are so gnarly. I had never seen anything like it. But the ski racing background and like that ski instructor, like technical background really helped me, because there were just these pillow lines that you'd like hop, 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 straight line out, and just like really tight technical landings. I started picking lines like that, which was kind of what you needed to do in a place like that. And in it, I won. So
no way. God damn.
I know. So
that's insane.
The first year I was like, maybe I'm made out for this. And of course, through those competitions, I ended up winning the overall title for the women, because I just happened to pop into two of the.
And you only did 2 of the comps of the whole season, but you won them all. You basically went 4 for 4, because you'd run the opens too. Wow.
So that won me the North American title, and then invited me onto the world tour. So the next 8 years I spent competing on the world free skiing tour, and traveled all over Europe and South America, etc.
Wow, that is such a cool story. I can't believe you're just like, hey, I'm gonna try. Somebody talked you into it. I'll try this, and then you go 4 for 4 and win the overall time. I bet other people were pissed. It was just like, who the hell is this person?
Yeah. Well, they were like, who are you? Like, we've never seen you. You have no sponsors to your name. Like, what the heck?
And did that work? Did competing and doing well in those lead to sponsorships, lead to getting paid as a skier?
Yeah, it did. So after those 2 competitions and the title, of course, the title really helped.
Yes.
Winner of the North American Freeskiing Tour, I instantly got some prospective sponsors. Actually, so that first summer, so I lived in Jackson Hole that winter, 2 winters, and then essentially my second summer in the region, I decided to move to Ketchum, Sun Valley, to work for the summer, because I had heard there was good money there, a lot of people that could pay me good money. At the time, Smith Optics and Scott were based in Sun Valley.
Right.
So I went into the office of Smith Optics first, because I just thought they were cooler than Scott at the time. And I just like randomly picked one or the other.
Nice.
And but I had connections at both at that stage. But it was Tag Kleiner, who was running the athlete management side of the marketing department, and we sat down in person, like no video call,
old school,
like in person, old school, and talked it out. And by the end of it, I was like signing a contract for money and gear, and I was like, sweet. So that was my first sponsor.
Yeah, you fell into this so hard. I love it. Continue. Yeah. Wow.
But meanwhile, I'm just gardening in Sun Valley, trying to make some cash.
Of course, the ski bum lifestyle.
Yeah, living out of my bus at the time, VW bus. Ooh, and then from there, Marmot signed me on, Dina Star signed me on, and as I learned how to talk with sponsors and work through some negotiations. It just sort of, rolled into that. And by the next winter, I had a lineup of sponsors and I was on the world tour.
Wow, I'm blown away. I mean, that is nuts to me. And because my next question is almost like negligible in a way, like because I want to ask, like, how did you get your body and mind right before these comps? But it almost seemed like you just came into this with no idea, like I'm just going to do my best, and it went that way. But I guess eventually you must have gotten to those, because I was always so nervous. I couldn't sleep the night before. I used to do some of these comps like Kirkwood, but I always did terrible. But how did you get your mind and body right before these comps?
I think part of that I have to attribute to ski racing. I mean, I spent so many years from 9 years old to 21 focusing in on high level skiing competition. And every time you're in the start gate, it's like nerve wracking.
Oh
Every
yeah.
time you try, you're trying to memorize your courses, especially in the speed events like Super G and downhill. And I think a lot of that prepped me for the mindset for the big mountain stuff. Big Mountain was a little scarier in certain regards, like getting air and like scoping landings and hoping the speed you'd get out of a straight line would work, and whatever. That was a little new to me, but a lot of the pressure felt familiar, and I was like, I know how to deal with this. It was really wonderful to be blissfully unaware for those first couple competitions.
Yes.
Really just so open-minded. I had no agenda, no expectation. And I think that's part of why I felt so good, because I didn't put the pressure on myself. 6, 7, 8 years later on the world tour, been competing for a while, in and out of the top 3. Yeah, the pressure would start to get to me. Like there was expectation on me, like, oh, Jess Baker's here, she's gonna do well. Oh, what if I don't do well?
Yeah. Oh
Stuff.
yeah.
That stuff started to crush me a little bit, and which is partly why I retired, but also after a while, I did have one injury. I'll tell that story at some point, but I was like, if I keep doing this, I won't be able to walk later on in life. So I need to stop doing these competitions. So that's
Yes.
ultimately came out of it. But yeah, it was hard. It was hard to manage that kind of pressure for like almost 9 years. That started to get to me. It started to feel like ski racing in a way, like you're managing so much pressure for so long. You're like, can I do this any longer, or can I maintain this?
The competition's also, kind of what you're referring to when you said a couple of sentences ago that it's hard on your body. These free skiing comps are almost always in bad conditions. And back, when I was competing, they would actually let you inspect the course. So people just beat the crap out of the course too. And, which they've changed a lot in the modern comps. And I remember one of my strategies, which was not successful, was I'm not willing to get hurt in these comps. And I don't think that's the right mindset. You kind of have to go for broke. Is that sort of something you thought about and experienced?
I think that's partly why I was never like grand star of these competitions, because I was always managing those things in my head. I was like, I want to launch that thing, but like, what if I lose it right there? I'm going to break myself so hard. And so
Yeah.
I was like always trying to pick smart enough lines that I had a little margin for error, but it would never be like the biggest wowie line, but it would always be like, as a conglomerate of a line, one of the better lines, and fluid. And, like I was calculated. Like I was like, these are the things the judges are looking for. I may not have the biggest error in this competition, but I'll have big errors and I will have fast fluid line. I bet I can win with this pick. And then someone would pick something maybe slightly bigger, but they'd crash.
Right.
And it was pretty consistent. Like I'd
Oh
watch it
yeah.
happen. And so I definitely used that strategy to stay on top or to stay high up in the rankings. And then every once in a while I'd be like, screw it, I'm just going to try this really big thing that feels really uncomfortable. And often I would often crash,
Oh yeah.
but it was also a way to expand and keep pushing the boundary. I think that was also very motivating. Was okay, yes, high pressure, definitely scary, super nerve wracking, but an amazing way to expand your ski ability. I'm sure you remember that. Like, whoa, I just pulled that off. I wonder if I could do that next bigger thing.
Right. Yeah. No, that the pressure from comps, I think, does make diamonds as well. It makes it really showcases a skill set, in that time, in that place. It's against other people. There's a lot going on in everybody's heads. Really impressive. You definitely had some amazing highlights. Were any lowlights from your competitive ski career that you could share?
Yeah, definitely. Like, let's see, I can't remember what year. I want to say 2000, I guess it was 2005. I was back at Kirkwood
Mm-hmm.
And, I had already done quite well there a couple years in a row. So high pressure. ESPN was there that year. It was going to be aired weekly through the winter once they filmed it. So like
Mm-hmm.
there were like camera crews everywhere in all the little spots all over the hill. They were interviewing you down below. It was very, very, high end, high stakes kind of competition that year. It wasn't like that every year, but that year they had ESPN on board and we were in the final run. And I decided to do one of the bigger things I hadn't done in a while and something I hadn't tried yet. So I aired near the top of the venue, was straight lining out, and I landed it, but then I tagged a rock on
Ooh.
the outrun that was like just under the snow.
Oh.
It wasn't in the landing, it was like more in the straight line out, and I
Uh-huh.
hadn't seen it in inspection, but I hit it. It stopped me dead in my tracks. I was probably going at least 60 miles an hour when I hit that
No.
thing. I was like, oh, I know something's wrong. Like
Oh.
screaming in pain. And my left leg, I had bruised my femur. Thank goodness it wasn't worse. Tib, fib, femur, all bruised. And then I did my ACL,
Ooh.
MCL, medial and lateral meniscus, and MCL.
Damn.
So I didn't know that at the time, but I knew something
Mm-hmm.
was really wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Got carted down in a sled. I remember they had to like lower the sled into the spot that I was in. Like it was all gnarly and they
Whoa.
lowered me out. And I just remember I was in such excruciating pain. They took me down to the clinic. They still wouldn't give me drugs because they weren't sure if they needed to operate on me right away. But once they finally realized they could wait on the operation, they finally gave me pain meds. But I was probably like no
Whoa.
meds, full pain, full shock for like 4 hours. Just it
No.
was,
Oh, I thought you were gonna
yeah,
say 1
it was
hour.
it was excruciating. It took them like a full hour just to get me off the venue. I was in a really bad
Mm.
place. Anyway, so not a highlight, right? But
No. Damn.
I'm like recovering. That was a really long recovery. That was a 9 months. Like I was on crutches for like 7 months because it was
Damn.
like non-weight bearing with the bruised
Oof.
femur and tib fib and the meniscus repair. But just to like hit it home, ESPN, of course, aired the whole thing the next like 6 months straight.
Right.
So people were coming up to me constantly, like,
Oh
oh, I
man.
saw your crash on ESPN. I was like,
No, of
no,
course. My worst crash is just televised to the world on a loop.
for the next 6 months. Yeah. And so
Oh,
for that whole year following the injury, I was like, yeah, that was me. Yes, that was me.
yeah.
But yeah, so
Well, I like that
that
there's like
was,
because I was gonna ask you for a funny story. That kind of qualifies, right? So your your
yeah,
your low light and your funny story have some overlap there.
that's true. That is true. Yeah, I can
Oh,
definitely look back on it now and think good thoughts, but that was a tough time for sure.
oh, that's brutal. Absolutely brutal. Like a lot of us as skiers and riders have been there with a
Yes.
knee injury. It's just not even close to fun. So you also are highly involved in guiding and coaching, and you are an AMGA certified ski and AMGA certified Alpine guide, which is insane and awesome. And you've been guiding since 2004. So you've been doing this for a long time now, 20 years. What
Yeah.
inspired you initially to become a mountain guide? Because it sounds like you've been doing this with an overlap of your pro skiing and competitive career. And what do you love about guiding?
I think like when I was in the big mountain, the free skiing side of things, I saw like at some point I needed to exit out of this, but I was like loving traveling all over the world and being in the big mountains. During the time I was on the competition, I had several comps in France and at that time, so I had befriended Doug Coombs and I ended up like, he was very much a ski mentor of mine. This is before I decided to guide. And he invited me to come to Le Grave with him and Emily. And so during those competitions, I then would like dovetail that with like trips to go hang out in Le Grave with him and Emily. The bigger the mountains got and the more technical and gnarly and rad they got, the more I wanted to be in them. I got to ski with a bunch of French guides while I was there. Like Doug would just connect me with, he was just setting me up. I would
Mhm.
help him organize his camps a little, but then I would also just get to go out with the raddest people, including him, explore all over Le Grave and the region. And I just like watched them work. I was just enough a part of that program. I was like, wow, this is really something I would love to do. But it felt pretty far off. I was so young and just getting, sinking my teeth into this really big mountain stuff. And I was good at it, but like I didn't have near the skill set to be a guide. So I was just sort of, observing in awe. But it was like in the back of my head, I was like, wow, that's a pretty cool profession. And then so I helped Doug a little with some of his camps, Doug and Emily, and kind of spearheaded like a women's camp for them. That was all between like 2004 and 2006. But at the same time, Doug had sold Valdez Heli-Ski Guides, and he was in Le Grave was sort of his next venture. But he was like, well, Jess, if you love Le Grave, you should be in Alaska. And I
Oh.
was like, oh yeah, Alaska. Yeah, okay. And of course I knew about Alaska, but like no one had ever told me like you should go. And then he did. And so in 2003, I went for the first time, but 2004, I kind of came on with, not with Valdez Heli-Ski Guides, but with Alaska Rendezvous, which
Nice.
was in a way an offshoot of Valdez Heli-Ski Guides, because Theo Miners, who was Doug Coombs's operations manager and lead
Oh.
guide, he was tired of Coombs's shenanigans, because Coombs was notorious for like breaking business protocol at the heli-ski operation. He would be like, yeah, okay, so we're gonna operate within this zone today, and then he would just quest off hundreds of miles with a helicopter. Even Emily would be rolling her eyes like, I cannot believe you are doing this. And so Theo got tired of those shenanigans. So when I went up to go see what was going on in Valdez, I connected him with Theo, who was also working with me at Jackson Hole. And he was like, well, maybe next year we can bring you on and you can audit or assist guide. And
Oh.
so 2004, I came in to do that. I lived between tent in the snow and
Oh.
on the floor in an extra room with 3 other people, and just roughed it out for a season. But like, absolutely blew my mind. Like I was just,
Yeah.
holy moly, the Chugach of Alaska just blew my mind, more so than France. I know it's crazy, but Alaska just like totally threw me for a whole nother world.
It's amazing.
And yeah, right.
Yeah.
That was really the tip of the spear for the rest of the guiding that came in after that. It was like, that was the initial invite to even begin down that path. And then everything started expanding from there.
That is a credible story. Wow. I mean, not many people could say Doug Coombs pushed them into Alaska and Le Grave and all these places. And so I was very fortunate to get to heli-ski guide with you one day in Alaska. And so so a lot of my questions are kind of Alaska heli-ski guide pointed. I am curious because it was really cool to watch you operate. What do you think? What's the biggest challenge in heli-ski guiding in Alaska?
What isn't?
Right?
What
Yeah.
isn't? I mean,
Top
I think,
10.
yeah, right. Okay, fair enough. Well, as you know, it's very intimidating, right? You come
Mm.
in and it's like the most vast, wide open expanse you can imagine, and the
Mhm.
possibilities are endless, but the possibilities are all not good. There's many, many good ones, but not all of them are good. And it's like, so challenge number one is reading texture from however high up in the air from a helicopter. Like, is this
Right.
safe to ski? Is it good to ski? Will this avalanche? That's
Mhm.
one. And that's a big one. The next one is, okay, I've landed. Now I need to manage this slope. So maybe you're digging a pit, maybe you're just going to ski cut it. Depends on the history. But like, is the snowpack going to allow me to do this from one valley to the other? It could be different.
Mhm.
And that sort of top down ski mountaineering thing that you're just hoping you can get enough of an assessment to send people down. And then the next piece is clients, right?
Yeah.
They're awesome. They're what make it all happen. They're paying for these trips, and you get a wide variety of people. And some folks are ready and they can do the thing, but many people are in over their head
Mhm.
initially. At least they learn over time. But you've got to manage slough, you've got to manage the helicopter. There's a lot going on, and I think as a guide, keeping clients tight and as safe as possible within the risky environment that it is probably the hardest of all the challenges. And weather.
Right. Oh, gosh.
Alaskan weather. Sometimes it's great. You get high pressure and you have perfect conditions for days, but then sometimes you'll just get sucked in. And I didn't say this first. I'm sure many guides prior to me have said this, but Alaska, it's the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. That would sum it up pretty well.
I think that does sum it up pretty well. Yeah. And me as a newer heli-ski guide in Alaska, it's the pace. I was a mountain guide for a long time. I think I'd been mountain guided for 16 years when I first heli guided, and I was like, whatever, dude. like the heli just makes it easier. I don't have to hike up. This would be so easy. And I was like, wait, hold on, time out. Can we get a couple minutes here? Like, this is way harder. It's way faster. Where do I land? Like, where do you get out? Like, how do I know that the snow's good? It's insane. And then you mentioned clients. Like, have you had any like just horrible clients? Have you had any like funny story clients
I mean,
that you're willing to share?
yeah. Yeah, I got to be careful here because,
Yeah, we
there's
could skip it. We could skip it.
Yeah. There have been many, many funny stories with clients, but some of the classic, and this is not just one, but many, you have the slough talk, you kind of talk about like how it works, okay, so you start a turn over here and your slough starts running, you gotta continue away from it. So if you start on the left, you're gonna have to kind of continue to work right as you move down the slope. And then, second turn, they turn right back into their slough, like stuff like that. That
Oh,
is
yeah.
sort of a classic mistake. And some end up very minor, and others get what we call chugatched all the way down the slope to the bottom. And that's just not fun. And I imagine they don't heli-ski anymore, but no deaths. It's just those are big mountains, and it's not fun when people fall down them. But
No, gosh, I
yeah,
got chugats for the first time last year.
you did.
Yeah, I thought I was above that. Like, yeah, I mean, it's just like basic math. 1+1 is 2. Like, you don't get caught in your slough. And I got caught in my slough, and it was the hardest fall of my life. Because when you get caught in your slough, it's like an avalanche. So it's not just one fall where, like, in normal skiing, you kind of fall, you take one big hit, like, oh man, that sucked, and you get your stuff and you go down. But this is just hit after hit after hit after hit. It's like, please come off skis, please go away poles. It was very humbling. Lost a ski forever. It was lost my poles. It was oof, yeah. Have you had any? Have you been chugatched?
Well, yes, I've been caught by my slough a couple times now, and some worse than others. I've been caught where like I was able to sort of pull out of it and barely made it out, and then I've also gotten fully tumbled. But like my worst kind of chugatched, it wasn't initially by slough. I was actually with a film crew, funny enough. We were at mile 40 and a half. I don't know if you've ever gotten to ski that terrain, but
I don't think so.
it's right off the road. You can see it. And it's these like super steep ramps, a bunch of them. And, they're minimum deepness 45 and they go up from there. And it was probably like 50 to 55 degrees what I was skiing. I mean, my hand was really close to the slope, and I was sort of like etching some turns, kind of almost like hop turn, but like a little bit more fluid. And I was starting to get confident, and I was managing the slough pretty well. And I picked up the pace just a little bit and had a little more momentum. And I kind of like came into this one. It was semi hop turn, kind of finishing the turn. And I just suddenly like catapulted in the air. Like I caught the edge a little bit, and suddenly I was like in the air. And the next thing I know, I was just tomahawking down this 1,500-foot ramp uncontrollably. I was, spinning 3-4 times in the air before I would feel a body part hit, whether it was a head or foot, just cartwheeling. Things were just coming off as I was, goggles gone, helmet gone, skis gone, poles gone, glove gone. By the time I landed, I did finally land down in the flats. I stood up and I was like missing most of the things that were supposed to be on me other than the baseline clothes. And I just like remembered like taking my hands and like squeezing my arms and squeezing my legs, and I was standing on my feet and I was like, oh, I survived. Because I was like, I think this is where I die, and like I might not come out of this. And then I stood up and I was totally whole, no injury, maybe some bruises and definitely a hurt ego. Man, I got you guys pretty hard on that one for sure.
You're spinning hard when the centrifugal force pulls off your gloves. Damn.
Yeah.
That's a fall.
It was bad.
Yeah, and if you're 3 or 4 spins before you touch, yeah, that's like exceptional. Wow.
It's probably why
you get hurt.
it's probably why I didn't get hurt. I was like in the air more than I was actually touching ground.
Right. And then when you hit, you were just barely hitting. Ding.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. That's intense.
I didn't do that again. That was in 2004, one of my first years up there. So I learned my lesson. I was like, okay, when it's that consequential and that steep, I just have to like keep it a little slower. Like, don't get too confident. It just doesn't back off,
No, that's how I feel after mine. It's like, last year was my 3rd season, and it's like, wow, okay, Let's check that box and move on. Let's not ever do that again. It was absolutely not
Yeah.
fun. And then you kind of like wreck other people's day a little bit because they got to get all your stuff. And, it's like a half hour just for me to ski down on one ski and I'm just thrashed. But
Oh
yeah, you know
yeah.
the story. It's crazy. Yeah. And then this is sort of in the same vein, that's a memorable story. But yeah, do you have any other memorable guiding experiences? Because you've guided in some really wild places like Alaska, Norway, Greenland, and more.
Yeah, gosh, there are many. I remember, like, back to the Alaska side of things. I remember the first avalanche that I had to rescue somebody out of, fellow guide actually, but
Scary.
kind of a repeat offender zone, this little area called Crybabies, which is actually really extreme terrain, but it was one of our mini zones
Hmm.
and just notorious for growing surface ore. And that thing ate up a couple guides. No one died, but it was a lot of close calls. Those were some very memorable moments and difficult.
And was it full burials, digging people out the whole 9 yards?
Yeah,
Whoa,
yeah,
scary.
kind of intense. And some were partial, but yeah, all equally as scary. Yeah, Alaska, I have a lot of guiding stories in Alaska that have been intense over time, but some other memorable like guiding experiences. So I've done some pretty big like boat ski trips and continue to do so. And one of the more memorable ones was it was our straight line project, and I was essentially guiding but also acting as an athlete for a story for Backcountry magazine, and some content came out of it. But we started in northern Norway and made our way to the northern tip of Svalbard. So we essentially like
Wow, that's a
skied
big
all
sail.
throughout. Yeah, and we skied all throughout northern Norway, explored all sorts of rad terrain there, and then sailed across the Barents Sea and made our way to Svalbard. Even though the skiing is obviously a huge part of this, when your base camp and your like method of travel is a sailboat, it
Mhm.
becomes part of your whole scene. And when we crossed the Barents, the first 3 days were like totally chill and quite mellow. But as we got further across, a storm came in and the swell got up to like 40 feet tall and
No,
like big enough that as this boat would dip down, you wouldn't see the horizon anymore, and all you could see was the wall in front of you, and then you'd like
no.
go all the way to the top, and then you're it's like a cliff, and you're like falling down the other side. And so we sailed through that, and that was I thought for sure we might die on that one, but the captain assured me if we just kept on our watch, we could continue on forward, no problem. And when
Wow.
when we finished that crossing, we got to the southern tip of Svalbard, and I remember we went to get on shore and do our first ski tour after crossing, and I literally could not stand up straight. I was like land sick, like I
Yeah.
was so used to rocking. So I was trying to set the skin track up this mountain, and literally it was like just weaving and bobbing. Like I could not keep a straight line. It was horrible. It took me like 3 days before I could actually do a real straight line on my skin track after that crossing.
Land
That
sick
was
is real. It's absolutely
yeah,
real. I was just
yeah,
did a little rafting trip down to Colorado this weekend, and like even then, it's like, whoa, I'm on the land. Feels like it's moving. What's going on? But when it's
yeah.
when it's big like that, and how big was your boat?
50 feet. So the
Oh
waves were
man.
similar size to the boat, and that was pretty wild. I definitely remember thinking, I hope I survive this. Like just
Woof.
not, it felt so foreign to me. And the Arctic water is like so cold.
Yeah.
You can't fall in. Like if you fall
No,
in,
you're
it's
done.
bad news. And we were
Yeah.
clipped in, when we were sailing, we were clipped in, and but the waves would like come over the deck and pour over you, and just crazy, crazy.
That's intense. Yeah, it's like it's funny that as skiers we end up on boats a lot. As people try to go in these like far north and far south places, and going to Antarctica and all this, and you just end up in some of the roughest seas. You're like, what the hell am I doing? I'm a skier. I'm just
I
getting
know.
beaten down by the ocean. I have no ocean skills. That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And where do you think is the coolest place you've guided, the most interesting?
That is so tough. I don't know if I can nail it down to just one, but I'll list several. I've been really focusing on northerly realms lately.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would have to say that between Greenland and some of the stuff I was doing in Norway and Svalbard, those two places are still just pretty high on my list. But the problem is I feel that way about Alaska too.
Yeah.
Not just the Chugach with the helicopter, but also some of the ski expeditions I've done, like in the Wrangell St. Elias and the Alaska Range. Just the terrain is so epic. I have a hard time nailing it down. I mean, even South America, there's just so much amazing terrain.
No,
I
I
don't
like
know if I
this.
could.
This is even better. You know, sometimes I ask people, what are your favorite mountain ranges?
I mean, the truth is, my favorite mountain ranges are the biggest ones.
Yeah.
The big, vast, like massive mountain ranges. And I guess the small ones too, because Tetons are really small. I mean, we're just 25 miles long and 5 miles wide, and it's some of the best
Mhm.
ski terrain I've ever been in. So
Yeah.
it's just intricate, interesting terrain that requires good decision making and skills. Like that's my favorite stuff to be in.
You've been a heli-ski guide for about 20 years, which is very impressive. And I feel honored that I got to heli-ski guide with you for a day, you know, I guess 2 years ago in Valdez. And so with all your experience, you know, going into your 20th or 21st heli-ski season in Alaska, what advice can you give me as a new heli-ski guide going into my fourth season?
Yeah, that's good. I wish someone had done this for me.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I learned the hard way. Yeah, I think you nailed it earlier when you were like, "Oh, the pace is so fast and it's just such a rushed environment." Like anytime you put a helicopter in the mix, it's like there's like a panic mode that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And the key is to slow yourself down somehow while still working within that framework. So I find like, okay, I know that my transitions might need to be quick, and I know that my time in the helicopter is fairly quick, but I need to buy myself time when like it really counts. So for one, when you're flying around and you're looking at the train you're potentially going to work with, if you didn't get a good enough look, tell the helicopter to circle again, because
That's good.
that's huge. Like if you don't know where you want to be on that hill and all of a sudden you're 4,000 feet up on this line and you're going to go ski this thing, like how do you know how you're going to manage it if you didn't really take it in? So like another look, another circle, maybe a little hover, take the time to do it. You know, it's not going to cost you that much extra in flight time, and it will make a world of difference for how you create the next part of the experience. And then the other piece is once I get out of the helicopter and once I've gotten my transition done, I'm like, okay, now it's time for the deep breath. Now it's time for everybody to like focus and calm down for a minute. And I try to slow the pace down a little with that, whether it's like a deep breath for myself or like have everyone just sort of focus in and like narrow in on what we're about to do.
Mm-hmm. I like
Because,
that.
yeah, because you're in really intense terrain, potentially big peak, and you're still kind of buzzing from that heli ride and then from the heli that's about to pick you up. And it's like, okay, I have time. And so then I just focus in on my run. I actually block out the heli. If I need to call the heli to say, hey, you need to set down somewhere else for a minute or whatever it is, like I then now focus just on the run. So now it's run focused. I'm going to manage the avalanche hazard. I'm going to get my people through. Okay, now we're going to bring the heli back into the mix. And I just try to separate that out. And if I need to, I buy myself time. I'm like, okay, yeah, go pick up the other group or go ahead and
Mm-hmm.
set down, give us a moment, or go ahead and shut down on the glacier and we'll call you when we're ready. That can sometimes alleviate that high paced, overly stressed feel that can happen. And it's so hard to avoid. There's like a thing in the heli-ski guiding world. It's like rotor fatigue. And it
Mm.
actually happens. It's almost like a constant like background anxiety that's running, that rotor and the noise, and you don't realize it's getting to you and you don't realize it's getting to you, and then like 2 weeks in suddenly you just like snap. You snap at somebody or you get really frustrated, or it's just like there's this frustration that wells up and like everyone's like, whoa, I have no idea where that came from. It's like rotor fatigue, like literally the stress of that high
Mm-hmm.
paced machine. And so kind of recognizing like, oh, maybe I need a moment, or maybe I just need a day off. Like,
Right.
it'd
Absolutely.
be really valuable. So I
No, I
love
feel that.
yeah, right. Like I love helicopters so much, but sometimes they do just the machine itself can create the stress that tips you over the edge. So
I like that. Thank you so much for those tips. That helps. And yeah, I did a little research on the noise. I think it's about 100 decibels, the noise of a helicopter on average. And it just, that causes stress in human beings, just the noise of it alone. And I notice it, you know, so I try to have the best earplugs and all that stuff, but it doesn't matter. Your body can feel it, right? Like you're getting it through your chest
totally.
even. So yeah,
Yeah.
it is a wild experience being around a helicopter that much.
This episode of the Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by Club Med.
Calling all skiers and snowboarders, escape to the snowy peaks of Europe, Japan, China, or Canada with Club Med. Their more than 20 all-inclusive mountain resorts offer unparalleled convenience and endless adventures. Explore world-class ski resorts, indulge in authentic gourmet dining, and unwind with lively après-ski activities. Let Club Med take care of everything so you can simply relax and enjoy your ski getaway. Visit www.clubmed.us or call 1-800-CLUB-MED or call your travel advisor to discover your ski paradise. You've skied some incredible peaks, around the world, like the Grand Teton and the Wyoming, Mont Blanc in France, Denali in Alaska, which are, to me, very big time. And you've landed first ascents in mountain ranges all over the world. I'm just curious, which one of these really stuck with you? If you had to pick one or a few, which one of these achievements are you most proud of and why?
Yeah, gosh, that is so tough. And like these days, I feel like even if I am doing first descents now in some of these places I'm traveling to, I no longer claim it or talk about it because I'm like, it doesn't even matter anymore. Like it doesn't. What really matters to me is that the exploration, the feel of a new space and kind of mindset when you're stepping into a new place for the first time. So that's what really counts for me. And so, I use those for my resume and whatnot and they were all big ski descents and all really like they really helped form like the backbone of my career. But I tend to not focus on the first descents as much, even though I am certain I've done many recently. But they're not first descents. They were, or maybe they were first descents for a woman, or I'm not sure. But some of the stuff that I did with Doug Coombs in LaGrave, lines I still haven't touched since the day I skied them with him, still stick in my mind as just ultimate high level skill. I like the Panda Rideau and skiing off the summit or near the summit of Lemage and down through these just insane glacial, ice fall zones. Very, very steep skiing, sometimes 60 plus, just like the craziest stuff I've ever done, really, when I think back on it now. And some of those really shifted my whole career. Like when I would complete something like that, I would be like, whoa, I can't believe I just pulled that off. And then it would just like expand my possibilities. Like I would just shift my whole perspective on things. And I also knew in the back of my head, I can't do this all the time. If I do this all the time, I'm probably going to die pretty quick.
Yes.
To do these things, it's a very, very special moment when I get to ski something like that. And I knew it. And when Doug died, part of me was like, I knew that was coming. Like not really, but in the back of my mind, there was a piece of me that just knew, like, the more you spend in those environments with that kind of exposure, the more the numbers start to catch up to you, the stats get to you. But some of those descents I did with Doug early on in LaGrave, like 2004, 2005, 2006, were some of the most special descents of my life. Other places where I've really felt like a sense of accomplishment, some of my work on University Peak in the Wrangell St. Elias, I haven't skied off the top.
That thing's nuts.
Yeah, it's so gnarly, as Cody Townsend has recently discovered.
Right. Oh my gosh. It's like an 8,000 foot boot pack or something, you told me?
Well, to the summit, it's from base camp, it's almost 10,000.
Whoa.
Like really, really big line. So I only got 4,500 feet up the face or something.
A lot.
But it's changing a ton. Like it's a south face in Alaska in a super glaciated place where climate change is very, very obvious. That line is just changing, and I'm not sure someone will probably take it off, and maybe I'll go back there at some point. I've tried it twice now. Not just my attempt on that face, but the stuff I got to ski around that area as I warmed up to that face and got into the zone. Some of that was very, very memorable.
Wow.
Possibly some first ski descents, who knows? But yeah, some of that sticks in my head too. But really, I think more than like the place, the one that I can nail down, it's more the sense of being able to go explore, like literally go into a space with no preloaded information, no map with a line on it, and just let's do this. Let's see what it takes to make this happen.
That's beautiful. I've seen university from a plane, from a flight sea, a small plane. I lived in the Wrangell St. Elias for a summer, and that thing
Nice.
is gorgeous. What a beautiful thing. That and St. Elias, so special. I am curious to dig a little bit here. How did you feel when Doug Coombs passed away? What year was that?
So that was 2006. I had just been there with Doug and Emily. I was there for like 2 weeks with them. And then I was in Alaska heli-ski guiding when he passed away. He died on a line that we had actually skied together,
Oh, really?
just 4 weeks prior. Like I had
Jeez.
just been there with him. The line is the Polychinelle. So it is several different kinks of a couloir, like it zigs and zags. And a couple of the parts of this couloir are very exposed over really big cliffs. And when I heard he had died and I got more information about that, I was just so surprised at first. I was like, how could he? We just skied it. Like he knows
Hmm.
the hazard, he understands the exposure. Like how could he fall off that thing? Like I remember the way we skied it, like we didn't get it anywhere near the edge of these really big exposure pieces, but we were in it. But and then as I heard the story, I was like, oh, it makes sense. Doug was always the reason why he was such a good guide is he cared so much about his partners and who he was with and his clients. And when I realized he was mentoring Chad, who was with him at the time, and it was Chad that slipped off first, and Doug went to go see if he could help or if he also fell prey to the same mistake, which was that at the edge it was pure ice and they both lost it. So as I learned more, I was mad. I was like, why would you do that? You should know better. But then I thought about Doug and I'm like, oh man, he was such a caring dude. All at that moment, he lost sight of any of his own safety and just cared about the other person so much that
Hmm.
he also fell to his death. So that was hard. I kind of lost it during that time. I did not do well with that. That was like my first I mean, I had lost people to the mountains before, but that one was so close to me. And it was also truly like I was in the heart of my mentorship with him. He was like helping me start move towards guiding certification. Like everything was sort of being directed by him at that stage for me in the best way. And I just remember feeling this whole like, how am I going to move forward? Who's taking care of me now? Like who's going to show me the rope? Who even cares anymore, like that felt like a huge loss. And I remember I had to take time off from heli-ski guiding at the time. I was like, I had a hard time with it. It was tough.
I'm so sorry that happened, and thank you for sharing. Because yeah, I think that in the mountains we lose people, and it's we don't talk about it enough. So I appreciate when folks are comfortable to open up and show us how they feel. Well, I guess we'll switch gears a bit. Do you have any funny stories from any of these big ski expeditions that you've done?
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah, that one's always a high pressure question.
I know that is a high pressure question. I feel like little funny things happen all the time. On that Barents Sea crossing, after that Barents Sea crossing, we were all a little stir crazy from being on the boat forever and also quite land sick and just trying to like regain our bearings. And I was on that trip with Rachel Burks, and she was like, let's make a music video. Let's get a little lighthearted here. She's like, let's do like a Beach Boys cover. And so we did the Aruba, Jamaica song. And
I love that song.
we spent essentially like a full week just rehearsing little bits and pieces of that song in order to make this music video. So we made this music video. It was on YouTube for a while. It may have been taken down because of music rights. I don't know. I can't remember. But essentially we spent like a week rehearsing and then a week of recording all the little bits and pieces. And one of the scenes, I volunteered to do one of my parts in a bikini out on the deck of the boat while sailing. And
Nice.
so the day that we were going to film it, of course, a huge storm comes in,
Oh,
but we decided to go through with it. So there's this whole part where I'm like singing in a bikini on the boat. It's like gale force winds. I think the whole time my hair's covering my mouth, my face anyway. You can't even see me. And it's like hailing sideways, snowing, probably 20 degrees Fahrenheit max, if that. And somehow it still made it into the video. That was a pretty funny moment.
that sounds like the
We
best
we
part of the
pulled
video.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. It was good. There were some other pretty good parts of that one too.
Let's jump into your company, Ski Divas, and which is a women's ski camp. And I'm just curious, what inspired you to start women's ski camps, and what sets these ski camps apart from others?
Yeah, so I was still kind of on the competition scene. I was starting some guiding in Alaska. I was working with Doug in Le Grave. And what I noticed when I would travel to Le Grave, but also Alaska, is just so few women in the
Hmm.
mix. Not that that was any different than what was happening in the industry at the time, but like especially Le Grave, I was like, wow, I am the sole woman of 150 people lined up this morning at the Teleferique. Where
Hmm.
are the women? Like, where are
Hmm.
they? So I talked to Doug and Emily about it, and they were like, yeah, why don't we do a women's ski camp? They said, if you want to help us spearhead it, we would like to run a women's ski camp. So I helped them run their first women's ski camp.
Congrats,
And
that's so
it,
cool.
yeah, it was great. But then that same year is when Doug died. So it was just like all this momentum to like, whoa. And then Emily reached out, I don't know, 5 months later, and she said, hey, we're going to give part of the business, we're going to send part of the business to Miles Smart. And then if you want to move forward with the women's side of it, you should. And so that was sort of the impetus. And I was like, well, do you want me to keep it as part of, steep skiing camps worldwide, or do you want me to just expand? She's like, why don't you just go for it? She's like, you had the idea, like you should go forward with whatever you want with camps. And so I took that, and I took that motivation and started Ski Divas. And I started by actually running camps in Le Grave, but then I realized, oh, I kind of need like feeder camps because Le Grave is pretty extreme terrain, right? So then
If our
I
listeners don't know, Le Grave is maybe considered the most extreme terrain in the world. It's ridiculous. It's you basically cannot ski it without a guide. You would
Yeah,
end up on a cliff and big problem.
it's like Chamonix, but without the easy runs at Chamonix. It's all of the hard runs at Chamonix only. Anyway, started the camps in Le Grave, and it was great, but I also realized there was a need for like some feeder camps, something to build to that. So I started running a camp with Jackson Hole, a women's camp that was more for the intermediate to advanced zone, or even expert that was like looking to expand. And then from there, I sort of branched out into various places like Canada, and folks asked me to come do camps at their ski areas. And I just sort of expanded into places that were looking for that kind of thing. I really wanted to specialize in a more niche experience, like a little more intimate. I didn't want those huge, huge women's ski camps that are like 100 women and like maybe you get to meet like 10 of them. I
Mhm.
wanted to create the niche, more intimate experience. So generally speaking, my camps are smaller in size. I think the max size I've ever done is like 25 people, really looking to like focus in on individuals and their improvement and create a really supportive environment. So that's the gist of it.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And what are the key skills and experiences you aim to provide for the participants?
Yeah, I think like supportive environment is one, just coming, feeling safe, being willing to be vulnerable, willing to try and fail without worrying about criticism, a place where you can expand your skill sets with other people looking to do the same thing, and then camaraderie.
Yes.
Because there were just so few women doing it, and I wanted them to know like, oh, here's another ski partner, here's someone else you might be able to go do a trip in the future. Maybe you all can come with me to Le Grave eventually, or Alaska.
Hmm.
So it was kind of steeped in this like supportive learning based environment, like really just trying to create the right space for that.
I think that's terrific. And I like how you talked a little bit about giving people a space to fail too and crash and make mistakes. And that's one of my messages that at some point I'd love to push to the world and maybe just to the ski world to start. But you should be looking for failure. Like failure is people just, it's been so in our Western society, it's just failure is just this bad thing. And you got to avoid it and you got to wash it off of you and forget it ever happened, pretend like you've never experienced it. And failure is how you get better at stuff. It's failure is where the
Yeah.
magic is. You got to challenge is what makes us better, not the easy times. So especially in skiing, don't you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, especially in America, we could use a little dose of like, I enjoy challenge, because that's how you get through things. That's how you work through and get to something to fruition. It's through the challenges. So, yeah, it's super important.
And I love that you're creating that supportive camaraderie type environment where, hey, let's get out here, let's be challenged, let's find where our limits are. We can have some failure and still high five and be stoked on each other at the end of the day. And when you have that kind of
Exactly.
environment, that's where the growth is going to happen. Because, I love, I saw a drawing the other day. It had a circle and it said your comfort zone inside the circle. Then it had an arrow
Yeah.
to outside the circle and it said where the magic happens, because in your
Yeah.
comfort zone, nothing new, exciting happens. It's getting
No.
outside of that. And when you can get outside of that with a supportive environment, that's where progress is going to happen. And that's so cool. That's what Ski Divas is doing for women.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a work in progress since 2007 was when I officially founded it, and
Long time
a
ago.
work, yeah, but a work in progress always. Now I'm running this BIWAC ski camp. I started it with kind of all the social unrest that was happening around COVID. And it's been like a whole nother aspect that I've just really enjoyed and been missing in my mix. And that is just offering something to those that do not normally get this kind of offering, and trying to expand the reach of the sport of skiing that I believe is like a very healing, amazing sport to have in one's life. So that's been another very rewarding aspect of it.
It's really worked for me, that's for sure. My biggest losses in life, skiing got me through those, and no questions asked. And actually, sometimes there wasn't snow available, so hiking in the mountains can work for me too. And that's you're leading me, segueing right into my next line of questions, which is you spearheaded North America's first ski camp for Black, Indigenous, and women of color. And BIPOC, what does that stand for? Could you tell our listeners?
Yeah, so BIPOC is Black, Indigenous, and person of color.
Okay.
And that acronym really got very, very popular, in the beginning stages of COVID, as COVID just created a lot of upwelling of emotion. But I think the biggest and most important one of that was this social unrest that, like, racism is still a problem in America. Inequality is very much a problem in America. And what are we going to do about it? And because we all had time to think about it and hang out
Mm-hmm.
and consider these things, stuff was actually happening. And I was like, well, I'm not just going to, like, give lip service on social media. That's definitely not my MO. So I was like, why don't I just create a camp? And so I started reaching out to sponsors and potential supporters, and a lot of people were behind it. And it caught like wildfire. And the next thing I knew, I had enough funding to run the first camp the following year, which was still a COVID year. So it was a bit of a challenge, but I knew how important it was. As far as I know, I am the first to run a specific camp for BIPOC. But the coolest thing about it is that not long after, like a year and a half after, many, many more like BIPOC run organizations started doing it too. And that's like what I wanted to see, is just like more opportunity for more people. In my first year running the camp, I had this amazing woman, Annette Diggs, who came. She was one of my applicants. She shined through in the application. I was like, I'm bringing her. She accepted the nomination, and she has since gone on to start Edge Outdoors, which has become a really big, wonderful organization that is bringing a BIPOC into outdoor spaces at all times of year: skiing, snowboarding, hiking, backpacking, avalanche education. And she was one of my first participants. She told me, she's like, not only is this true allyship, what you're doing, but please don't stop. No matter how many people start doing this, no matter, who tells you shouldn't be, she's like, just keep doing this. She's like, this means more than you could ever imagine. And like, her words meant so much, because as she's Black, she's a very talented businesswoman. She's organizing all this stuff, but she herself needed it. She even recognized that, like, this is something that just hasn't been out there and needs to be out there. And so I've continued on. This will be my 5th year coming up. I've had some incredible sponsors: Osprey Outdoor Research, Jackson Hole Mountain Resort, Exum Guides. Like, I've all been throwing in funding to make it happen. Some private donors that have really stepped up to the plate. I have a nonprofit partnership with Spread the Love Foundation, and it's working. It's still happening, and it's a labor of love. I'm volunteering my time to do it, but it is really important to me.
Well, congratulations on finding some success with that. And thank you. I feel grateful to people like you who put that time and energy and, carve out a significant chunk of your life to make these kind of things happen for people who deserve to be in the mountains with us. So, and the real truth is, we need it. The ski world needs it. The economy of skiing needs it. It's needed on so many levels. I had Henry Rivers on the show a couple of years ago from National Brotherhood of Skiers, and it's
Nice.
just the hearing from the people who are in the BIPOC community. It's like you said, please keep doing this. It's terrific. I want to see those people out there. We know how monochromatic and male dominated the sport is, and I would love to see it to branch out and grow and reach to all these kind of people. So thank you for that. I'm pumped that you and the folks that you were mentioning are doing that as well. And I love seeing it just kind of grow and grow and grow. And we talked to the Vominos Outside people up in Bend, Oregon, and it just seems to be the hot ticket right now, and it has a future, which makes me very content.
Totally. And it's interesting because I think like the next step is getting ski areas on board, because there's a barrier,
Yes.
and it's financial, and we all know this. And it's even a barrier
Mhm.
for me. I couldn't do it without the connections I have in the ski world.
Mhm.
So I do think like our next step is like, how can we make this more sustainable? Like we don't want skiing to die because it's gotten too expensive, or we don't want it to get so elite that only just a fragment of our society can be there. Like it is such a joyful thing, and it really is, I would say, one of the most freeing experiences you can have once you get into it. Like that is something that everyone should have access to. And so if we can find more sustainable ways to bring more access, that makes a difference. And I know there's a lot going on, like schools go out and ski and whatnot, but it's like they get to go once and then they never go again, and I hope we can
Exactly.
see, yeah, I hope we can see over time, like whether these are funds that are created over time that get invested to help like fund these initiatives, or states get involved and just like help subsidize some parts of it to get people to that place. I think it's key. And I also think with climate change and a lot changing, like if skiing doesn't get more attention and we don't allow more people to experience it, like we could lose the thing that we love the most.
Absolutely. No, I think you're absolutely right. We need to get the ski resorts on board. It's not going to be easy, but there is going to be pathways to get it done. And hopefully maybe somebody new will come up with a new idea, or somebody already doing this like you will come up with a new idea, but we got to get the ski resorts on board. And I think it's, like you said, it's really rewarding. A lot of psychologists talk about the 5 pillars of happiness, and one of them is others orientedness or other orientedness. So when you can help other people, man, it is just such a gift. It makes you feel so good. And I think we could get a lot of people involved in that way, and get a lot of people feeling great, and get a lot of people that aren't on the hill and not represented out on the hill. And we need that moving forward. And speaking of moving forward, I am curious a little bit about your future goals and projects. And I just want to hit that you recently starred and produced in a movie called Going Greenland, which came out in 2023. And I don't know anything about it. I looked up a little bit, but I'd love to hear, what did you guys do out in Greenland? What is this project, and what did it mean to you?
Yeah, so it was a big project. I'm still kind of recovering from producing that
Oh,
movie,
wow.
but yeah, it was a lot. It was really the first movie I'd like fully produced. I'd helped with productions and been part of productions, but this was my first like brainchild from the start to the
Your
finish.
resume is getting out of hand. I love it. Now we got to have
Yeah,
movie
yeah,
producer.
it's totally out of hand. Yeah, that's my next career. I'll in 20 years talk to me.
All right,
Um,
let's do it.
but yeah, so in 2019, I went to Greenland for the first time with a boat that I had been working with in Svalbard and Norway. We decided to meet up in Greenland. We did this big exploratory on the West Coast. It was Rachel Burks, Joey Schusler, and I, and the
Wow.
captain. And it was this just incredible trip. We had 3 weeks guaranteed. We skied a lot of first descents. We just expanded into terrain, but it was melting the whole time we were there. It was like just hot and pouring water, and
Oh.
we had the most incredible corn cycle because of it. 24 hours of sun, but also just like this perfect corn cycle because of the heat. But also just we were watching the rate of melt. We're like, does this happen every year? Like this is crazy. And so we
Hmm.
get back after one of the most amazing trips of my life, and I start like doing some research, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like the hottest year on record in Greenland thus far. Like the summit station at 10,000 whatever feet at the top of the ice cap, which is a little further north up in the center of the ice cap, it had recorded 2 days above freezing for the first time ever, consecutive
Really?
days,
Wow.
around that time that we were there, just after we had been there. So essentially we were leading up to that point while we are in the space. I just got me thinking. I was like, whoa, like climate change is just really affecting places like Greenland, like at an exponential rate, right? And I've seen this in
Hmm.
Alaska too. But it just kind of triggered something in me. And at the same time, the boat captain was like, I'm done with this diesel engine that's on my sailboat. I just want to get rid of it. It smells, it's loud. He's like, I'm going to make this a green boat. I'm going to go full green. Like, you already are green when you're sailing with no engine, right? But now he's like,
Yeah.
I want to get rid of my engine. I'm going to go for an electric engine, solar power, wind power, and sails. That's what I want. And
Beautiful.
then COVID hit, and it was like, oh, we're not going anywhere and no one's doing anything. But in the meantime, he's like, I'm doing it. So he spent COVID just like transforming his boat. He got rid of his diesel engine. He got some sponsors to get solar in the mix and the battery cells. And when we kind of started to come out of COVID, I was like, okay, let's go back. But this time, let's go back with the green boat. And
Ooh.
so we went back with the green boat. And Going Greenland is essentially a story about our experience trying to sail and ski on the west coast of Greenland with a fully renewable energy boat, and the trials and tribulations that come with that, and the awareness that starts to form in your head when you try something like that. I don't want to give away too much because you can watch the movie and it's available online. It's on YouTube on both Osprey Pack's site as well as Mountain Hardware. It's also on Outside Watch, so you can look it up there. It's also still traveling right now with Banff Mountain Film World Tour as well as Kendall Mountain
Congrats.
Film World Tour. Yeah,
Wow,
thank you.
congrats.
So it's still out there in theaters too. So, and if people are like really excited about bringing it to their town, we're still doing that. So you can reach out to me, but I don't want to ruin it. So that's the gist of it. And it's about our adventure on a renewable energy boat in Western Greenland. And it is not all easy, let me tell you that.
Oof, it sounds spectacular. And Greenland is the number one place that I haven't skied that I want to ski. So
Yes,
that'll be right up. I'll cue that up tonight.
we'll have to get you there to Greenland.
Great.
Yeah.
I mean, what might be some of your future goals, future projects, both personally and professionally?
I do want to make another movie. This time I want to focus in a little bit on the Biwak ski camp side of it and tell the story of
Yes.
some of the gals that have come to me. I have First Nations women who have amazing stories and connections to the land that they're learning to ski on for the first time. Annette Diggs' story about Edge. So I'd really like to make a movie about that. And those are like origin stories. And these will be like the start of generational stories to come. I already have Dene women, this gal Angel, who has already taught her family how to ski after being at my ski camp. So these are stories like I really want to tell. And that'll probably be my next movie. As far as skiing goes, I have lots of goals. I am going to return to Greenland. I can't help myself. I keep exploring further and further and I keep moving into new terrain. So I am going back to Greenland in 2025, May 2025.
Yes.
Yeah, I am going back to Alaska as well. I cannot not go to Alaska. So yeah, I'll be in Haines again this year, but maybe I can make it up to Valdez as well.
I would love
Um,
that.
Everyone always asks me like, are you ever going to go to the Himalaya? And there's yeah, there's some stuff on the horizon that I may be venturing into, and I won't expand too much now, but that is starting to come into my radar. Not Everest. That's not really my thing. The tallest is fine. That's great. I'm really glad for everybody that's done it, but I'm just more interested in the exploratory part. And there's some zones that I'm starting to look into. And then I have a potential exploratory in the southern end of Chile, and I'm not going to say any more about that either. But
Wow.
that's 2025 or 2026, so that's coming up. I can't say much more. It's top secret.
I love it. Wow, that is great. We can all stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned. We'll have to revisit.
Oh, I'd love
But
to.
yeah, that's kind of there. And then, so I have a family and I really, really want to spend some more time skiing with my girls. I get so caught up in my own adventures sometimes. I'm like, oh, I just want to ski with my girls.
And how old are they
So
now?
7 and 10,
Perfect.
and
Fun
they're
ages.
getting, yes, and they're
Getting
getting into
strong.
they're getting into the age where they can really hold their own on the ski slopes.
Mhm.
My eldest skied Corbett's 2 years ago, and
Oh
now
my
I'm like, ooh, what can
gosh.
we do? Like, where should we go? It's always kind of a balance with the kids. Like, you don't want to push them too hard. You just want them to have fun. My goal is to spend a little more time skiing with them as well, because they won't be young forever.
Well, absolutely not. And so, well, and thanks for sharing that. That's so cool. And you've got a lot on your horizon. I'm excited to learn what all those secret, top secret missions are once that becomes public. And, one of my last real questions here is, what advice would you give to young women who aspire to pursue a career in skiing and guiding and being in the mountains like you have?
That's a good question. And I find myself more and more in the mentorship role as I move further and further into my career. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful to give back. And as I kind of examine my life and my career thus far, I realize I've had to fight really hard to be where I am, like too much. I wish it not to be that way, but I have fought tooth and nail at times to get to where I am. And what I hope is that now that there's more momentum in the women's space and a more diverse ski culture, it's slow, but it's still happening, that people support each other more. You know, as a woman getting into the space, it always feels like you're the only one, or there's so few, and you feel like you're fighting for like one space amongst many. And I think my advice is that you're not. You're creating the space that needs to be created, and that, you know, you should go forward supporting each other. And the more supportive we are of each other, the more space will be created. That was something that was not happening as I was breaking into these spaces. And I think the more supportive women can be of each other as they move into these careers, the better it will be. And then for my male cohorts, who I love very much, like, support the women around you that are trying to break into these spaces, because it's hard. It's kind of unknown territory. It's intimidating. You often feel like you have imposter syndrome, but it's just, you shouldn't. And the space is there to be taken if you're motivated, and to keep pursuing what your desire is. Like, don't let go because of a challenge. Like, keep moving forward. It will come to fruition. Just like we were saying earlier, like, everything does come with its challenges. You got to embrace the challenges, but the more support we can have for each other, the better.
That was very well said, and that's absolutely lovely. I love that ideology, and I think that's terrific advice. And Jessica, that's all I've got for you today. Do you have any other thoughts you'd like to share here at the end of the show?
Well, there is one. I have to, like, a big shout out to my husband, Brenton. He is
Who's
also a
awesome.
mountain guide. Yeah, who's awesome, who you also know and have met.
He's helped me out.
Yeah, I'm sure. He's helped me out. He helps me out all the time. But that's a big piece, is like, I get to do a lot of what I do because of a supportive partner, because there is a lot of sharing that's involved, and he takes the brunt of a lot of the childcare when I'm off on my big expeditions. So yeah, it takes a village for sure, and our support systems, and I'm very, very thankful for that. So a little shout out to him before we leave the show.
Jessica, it was great talking with you today. Thank you so very much for being here, and have a great rest of your day.
Oh, thanks so much. It's great to be on the podcast, Miles. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Snowbrains podcast. If you like this podcast, please share with friends and family, and please make sure to subscribe. To find out more about Snowbrains, please visit us at snowbrains.com. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, X, and more. This episode of the Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by Club Med. Ditch the hassle and embrace the freedom of an all-inclusive ski vacation with Club Med. Their resorts in the European Alps and Canada offer the perfect blend of exhilarating skiing, exceptional service, and worry-free pampering. Enjoy having lift tickets, delicious meals, lessons for all ages, and endless après-ski fun, all included in one price. While the kids are having a blast at the supervised children's clubs, you can focus on mastering your skiing skills and creating unforgettable memories on and off the slopes. Visit www.clubmed.us or call 1-800-CLUB-MED, or call your travel advisor to experience skiing without limits. This episode of the Snowbrains podcast was edited by Liam Abbott. Music by Chad Crouch. And I'm your host, creator, and director, Miles Clark.